Hi, parents. You're listening to the Project Parenthood podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Nanika Coor, clinical psychologist and respectful parenting therapist. Today, I'm sharing some tips for you parents with wobbly boundaries. You know who you are. You're great at meeting your kids' needs, but have a hard time asserting your own needs with them, and maybe with others too. Holding your limits is tough, and you feel like you have to do something your child is insisting upon, like you don't have any choice but to meet their demands. If you're a parent who feels like you must constantly meet your kids' needs at the expense of your own, listen up. This episode's for you. As a parent, you might find it difficult to speak up when your children are behaving in ways that don't work for you. Do you tend to stop yourself from saying what's true for you out of fear the other person will be hurt, or that they'll be dismissive or angry? You might feel that way because that actually happened when you were vulnerable with others. It could be that the adults you depended on couldn't accept what you said as true for you. Perhaps they couldn't hear your feelings or concerns as mattering as much as their own. You might have concluded that your feelings must not actually matter. The good news is that with conscious effort, it's possible to start giving your needs some airtime in your relationship with your own child. Before learning about respectful parenting, you might think that there are only two ways to resolve conflicts with children. The adult wins or the child wins, which means that someone always loses. You might worry that if you don't win, your child won't behave appropriately in the future. They'll have all the power, or ultimately, they won't respect you. If you tend to be the quote-unquote loser in conflicts with your kiddo, you might be a parent anxious that your child will have a meltdown if you don't give in to their demands. When parents either make unilateral decisions or have difficulty identifying and or asserting their own needs with their children, not only do someone's needs go unmet, but children also miss out on practicing valuable relational skills. When you understand parenting from a zero-sum perspective, it is hard to imagine that you could get to a place of win-win. But in fact, it's unnecessary to coerce or bribe your child into obedience or compliance, and you don't have to abandon your own needs just to keep the peace. So here's how I've commonly responded to parents who've struggled to assert their own personal boundaries with their children. One of the first things more permissive-leaning parents say is it really that hard to suppress some small need of mine to make my child happy if I don't mind? Well, it might be true that you don't mind, and parents do this all the time because small children can't meet their needs on their own. We absolutely must prioritize their needs sometimes. But when it's a regular pattern, your child experiences an uncomfortable amount of power in your relationship. A small child with more power than they're equipped to handle ultimately feels unsafe and anxious and will actually use more rigid control to try to manage a situation that feels out of control. Think of it this way. If you, their parent, are not steering the proverbial ship, but you're letting your child steer the ship, they realize that a child can't operate heavy machinery on their own. How scary is that? Other parents say, but if I don't give them what they're demanding, they'll be unhappy, and then I'll feel like a failure as a parent. That's really hard to feel. And it's important to remember that it's not your job as a parent to make sure that your child's never unhappy. Not only is that an impossible task, but it also doesn't make sense to be happy all the time. Happiness is not an appropriate response to every situation. It's true, holding a limit or a boundary means that your child may not like it. They may express a lot of anger or disappointment. Well, it's healthy to offload big emotions rather than holding them in, so you can free yourself of guilt around that. When you're able to calmly accept their big feelings for as long as they need to express them, they learn that their feelings are important to you and that those emotions are also temporary and survivable. If you are unable to tolerate their anger and disappointment, they won't be able to tolerate those emotions in themselves either. A big part of mental wellness and healthy relating is being able to experience the full range of emotions. So they say, but Dr. Coor, I don't even know what my unmet needs are. That's a common refrain from parents. I mean, a lifetime of putting your needs to the side for others means identifying those needs is a skill you'll need to consciously work on. When uncomfortable feelings like irritation or anger arise in you, it's a signal to ask yourself, what do I want to be happening right now instead? Let's say the answer is that you want your child to clean up their toys. You can go one step further and ask yourself, well, what would that do for me? Perhaps the answer is that it would give you some time to relax after their bedtime. So what's your need in this moment? Downtime and relaxation, maybe support so that you're not doing everything yourself. Communicate those needs to your child. And let your child know that what your limits are and what you will and won't tolerate or sacrifice. You, too, are a person with feelings and needs and a right to enjoy your life. Your kids need to not only hear what your needs are, but also that you're serious about making sure your needs don't get sidelined simply because your child has needs as well. Disregarding your boundaries means that your child comes to assume that their needs are the only ones that exist or matter. They won't learn that others are complex beings with their own needs. They get an unrealistic idea that others should be endlessly accommodating to them, and they don't get to practice the skills of conflict negotiation and resolution. Finally, parents often worry that their tendency to give in to their child is so entrenched. Can a person really change their way of parenting? Absolutely. And it starts with being aware that there's a behavior you want to change, having the desire to change it, and then really actively working on changing yourself. You can't just wish the situation were different. When you tune into the present moment and notice your body sensations, emotions, and thoughts in the moment, you can use that information to choose an intentional response aligned with what you really want, rather than reacting automatically in ways that don't serve you. Sometimes, we learn through our earliest relationships that our own needs are meant to be disregarded in the service of other people's needs. Suppressing your own needs to avoid challenging interactions with your children may feel like the easier thing, but it can actually increase anxiety-fueled controlling behaviors in your child and create more of the conflict you'd hope to avoid. It isn't your job to shield your child from unhappiness, and they miss out on important practice in navigating relationships when you do. Believe in your own capabilities and theirs in surviving their strong emotions. If you're ready to put in the effort of changing your behaviors, you can learn to identify and express your needs authentically with your children, instead of pretending to be okay with behaviors you don't like. Sometimes self-care means holding your personal boundaries, even if others don't like it. I hope that's helpful. You can find out more about my work with parents at www.brooklynparenttherapy.com. That's www.brooklynparenttherapy.com, and on Instagram at bkparents. That's BKPARENTS. If you have more questions about how to assert your needs in your relationship with your child, or any other parenting questions or stories, leave me a message at 646-926-3243. And be sure to let me know if it's okay to use your voice on the show. Or send me an email to parenthood@quickanddirtytips.com. And don't forget to subscribe to Project Parenthood on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Project Parenthood is a Quick and Dirty Tips podcast. It's audio engineered by Dan Firebend, with script editing by Adam Cecil. Our podcast and advertising operations specialist is Morgan Christensen. Our digital operations specialist is Holly Hutchings. Our marketing and publicity assistant is Davina Tomlin, and our intern is Brendan Pica. You can learn more about my work with parents at www.brooklynparenttherapy.com and on Instagram at bkparents. That's BKPARENTS. If you have more questions about PDA or any other parenting questions or stories, leave me a message at 646-926-3243. And be sure to let me know if it's okay to use your voice on the show. Or send an email to parenthood@quickanddirtytips.com. And don't forget to subscribe to Project Parenthood on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. That's all for this episode. Thanks for listening. Catch you next week.